Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. One of the big themes for quite some time now, and certainly one of the biggest discussions of this summer, has been whether the market has gotten out ahead of itself when it comes to AI valuations. Now, this has sometimes been translated broadly into a larger question of whether AI is overhyped, but as you've probably heard me say before, I think it's largely about specific market dynamics and the fact that Wall Street is trying to figure out how to price the future in stocks that are available to trade today, a thing that they're very uncomfortable with. Now, this week has been kind of an interesting one on that front, as we've had sort of a mixed story. On the one hand, we saw that Microsoft's results earlier this week were sort of a mixed story. AI was increasing as a percentage of Azure revenue, but Azure revenue didn't quite hit the estimates. But then Meta, as you heard in the headlines today, started to show how AI was paying off in the form of its advertising revenue. And in between all of this, we also had a big burst for NVIDIA yesterday. NVIDIA shares were actually up 13% on Wednesday, although the exact reason for that I think is a little bit debatable. On the one hand, it could have been about NVIDIA specifically. CNBC characterizes the jump as happening after, quote, remarks from top customer Microsoft and rival chipmaker AMD signaled there wouldn't be a slowdown in the multi-billion-dollar build-out of AI servers based around GPUs. Another way to look at this, if we're putting on our skeptical hats, is that even if there is a bubble in the hyperscaler build-out, in other words, companies like Microsoft and Google not being able to get the return on their investment in AI, in the meanwhile, NVIDIA and other chipmakers continue to benefit because they're cashing checks all along the way. UBS analyst Carl Kiersted wrote in a note, Microsoft earnings report may encourage most NVIDIA and semiconductor investors as Microsoft's capex came in much hotter than expected at $19 billion in the quarter. Other analysts argued that their peers weren't thinking about growth in AI in general the correct way. Morgan Stanley analyst Joseph Moore, for example, wrote, our perception is that the market is taking a very glass half empty view of some of the hyperscale comments, where there is a clear desire on the part of customers to continue to commit resources to developing multimodal generative AI. In other words, this particular analyst is arguing, to some extent, that other investors may be missing the forest for the trees. Now, it wasn't just NVIDIA who had a good day. AMD reported better than expected sales and earnings, and CEO Lisa Su said that the company expected $4.5 billion in AI chip sales this year, which was an 11% increase over what it had previously estimated. Goldman Sachs analysts said, we believe AMD's positive data center GPU business outlook and Microsoft's comments indicating a sustained increase in capex through fiscal year 25 bode well for NVIDIA. Now, of course, we also had a very dovish FOMC meeting that seemed to all but confirm that rate cuts were coming in September, so that also could have had some impact on the particular pop, but I think that the larger dynamics remain. What's more, the betting odds are that there's a lot more AI infrastructure build-out to come before any even theoretical bubble pops. One of the big stories earlier in the year was OpenAI CEO Sam Altman flying around the world trying to convince companies to go in on a $7 trillion scheme to increase AI chip capacity. And so the question that we want to ask for the rest of this show is, to the extent that there are questions around whether the hyperscaler big tech companies themselves, the Microsoft stocks, the Google stocks, etc., are the right place to bet on AI, are there other less obvious areas? I will also use this moment to remind you that nothing I ever say on this show or any other is financial advice. But one interesting question might be, what else goes into data centers other than just the chips themselves? In May, Goldman Sachs posted a report, AI is poised to drive 160% increase in data center power demand. They write, on average, a ChatGPT query needs nearly 10 times as much electricity to process as a Google search. In that difference lies a coming sea change in how the US, Europe, and the world at large will consume power and how much that will cost. So basically, this report estimates a few things. First of all, they're betting that there will be a significant increase in the percentage of global power that data centers consume, from 1 to 2% today to 3 to 4% by the end of this decade. This, of course, has lots of implications. As Goldman Sachs points out, since 2020, the efficiency gains appear to have dwindled and the power consumed by data centers has risen. Some AI innovations will boost computing speed faster than they ramp up their electricity use, but the widening use of AI will still imply an increase in the technology's consumption of power. By 2028, they expect that AI will represent around 19% of data center power demand. This has other implications as well. US power demand, which has been around 0 for the last decade, is likely to rise 2.5% over the next decade, which, as they point out, is a type of spike that hasn't been seen in the US since the early years of the 20th century. And so, as they point out, there is going to be a lot of work to get data center infrastructure and the power grid ready for this sort of new demand. They estimate that Europe needs $1 trillion plus of investment to prepare its power grid for AI. And of course, if they're right, that creates lots of interesting opportunities for investors to hone in on. Now, one of these little areas that I've recently been exploring is data center cooling. A recent report called Moving Beyond the Limitations of Traditional Data Center Cooling digs into the state of this field and how it's changing. Analyst Stephen Hill writes, In spite of the remarkable advancements we've witnessed in the world of computing over the last few decades, one of the most persistent challenges that still remain for data center operators lies in the basic problem of removing heat. It's a simple fact that as servers and other infrastructure devices get faster and more powerful, they also consume an increasing amount of electricity. And as everyone in the IT industry already knows, the majority of the electricity that passes through a computer exits in the form of heat. For data centers, it also requires nearly the same amount of energy to remove it. This, he said, leads to the delicious irony of computing. No matter how powerful our systems get, one of the key challenges still comes down to the relatively primitive issue of heat management. Hill then goes through what he calls the options. Air cooling he identifies as ubiquitous but inefficient. He writes the majority of data centers have continued to depend on the tried and true raised floor model of air cooling. Much like a refrigerator, raised floor cooling depends on the circulation of cooled air throughout the entire machine room. Hot air rising from the systems is gathered from the ceiling and passed through computer room air handlers, which are devices that are located at strategic locations at the periphery of the room. CRAHs based on chilled water, or computer room air conditioners based on refrigerants cool the air and then deliver it below a tiled floor that's raised with a metal framework between 24 and 48 inches above a concrete subfloor. One of the problems he points out is that you can only push so much air through the holes in a given tile. This has become more of a problem as the design of data centers have changed. Hill continues, the majority of high-density data center operators have adopted air as the model for cooling massive cloud data centers, likely because the substantial evaporating cooling solutions they require continue to be energy efficient at scale for moderate workloads. But he says this also presents problems because of the extraordinary water consumption requirements of these facilities. A large cloud data center can consume billions of gallons of fresh potable water per year. Now you, the listener, may have heard this start to come up as one of the critiques of the environmental impact of AI, and so again we're left with the question of what other solutions might there be. The next that Hill points to is water-based direct liquid cooling, which he calls better but challenging. Hill points out that water is about 24 times more efficient than air when it comes to transferring heat, but as he points out, water-based cooling isn't without its challenges simply because water and electricity don't really mix particularly well. Hill writes the majority of in-server water cooling is based on the direct-to-chip or D2C model, where pressurized water is passed through a water block covering the chip and then returned to a radiator or a chilled water source for recirculation. D2C water cooling, he writes, is clearly an improvement on air-only cooling for hosting higher density applications within an existing air-cooled data center. But he writes it's hardly common and almost never used as the primary source of cooling. Next, he comes to dielectric liquid cooling, which he considers evolving as a viable option. He writes, one of the earliest uses for refrigerant cooling was the Cray 2 supercomputer that was introduced in 1985. An incredibly powerful system for its time, but the only way to keep the extremely high-density circuit boards cool was to bathe them in a flowing dielectric coolant that wouldn't react with energized components. The floor-inert coolant developed by 3M was pumped through the chassis and then bubbled up through a dramatic see-through waterfall chamber, almost as large as the computer itself, where the refrigerant reverted back from gas to liquid for recirculation. It seems that everything old is new again on a revolving basis in IT, and the same holds true for refrigerant-based cooling. Based on a similar principle as our air conditioners and refrigerant freezers, this model leverages a cycle where heat is extremely efficiently transferred through the evaporation and condensation of a fluid with a relatively low boiling point. One of the versions of this he points to is called immersion cooling. There are two varieties of this, single-phase and two-phase, which he say both require a substantial tank filled with liquid, with the main difference being whether or not it's based on the evaporation or condensation process of refrigeration. Now, the latest entry, he says, is something called refrigerant-based two-phase D2C cooling. Try saying that 10 times fast. He said it offers some of the best attributes of earlier options, in particular the way it leverages the heat transfer enabled by the phase change of the refrigerant fluid from liquid to gas and back again in a closed cycle. Like a water-based D2C system, primary cooling is provided by a cold plate heatsink that is attached to the primary heat sources such as CPUs, GPUs, and potentially any other high-density ICs that may become major heat generators. However, unlike water-based systems, two-phase can remove heat by taking advantage of both sensible and latent heat evaporization. It also requires 4 to 9 times less flow rate at the chip compared to a single-phase water-based cooling. The example he points to is a company called Celsius's NuCool platform. He writes their process is specifically optimized to remove heat from relatively small electronic components. The cold plate, known as the vaporator, in contact with the processor is supplied with a liquid refrigerant, where it converts to gas in the presence of heat. The warmer gas flows through a manifold as part of a closed loop to an integrated heat exchanger where it condenses by transferring its heat to facility water or another refrigerant. And then there's a heck of a lot more about this specific technology. Now, in January of this year, datacenterdynamics.com wrote a piece called 2024, the Year of Liquid Cooling. The tipping point for liquid cooling has arrived, they say, with a few choices on technology. In it, they quote Josh Clayman, who's the CEO of that company, Celsius, who says liquid cooling as a sort of pragmatic solution has always been niche, but we're seeing the dynamic rapidly changing. Mainstream CPUs are becoming much hotter after years of incremental increases in wattage, so suddenly we're seeing a J-curve in terms of the heat that these chips produce. Now, there's a lot more that's interesting about this. I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but the point relative to this show, which is obviously much more technical than we normally get, is that I believe that one of the things that's going to happen as Wall Street digs deeper into these questions of the short, medium, and long term of AI, I think that whatever conclusions they come to when it comes to hyperscaler valuation and even base level infrastructure valuations in the form of companies like NVIDIA or AMD or Intel, they're likely quickly going to expand their field of view and horizon to other parts of the infrastructure build out that are going to enable this whole transformation, which, regardless of what Wall Street thinks, the hyperscalers don't seem to show any signs of slowing down anytime soon. I think that there's going to be a lot more focus on companies like this Celsius and other competitors in that space. And I think there's going to be really interesting opportunities to start to dive deeper and figure out what that infrastructure build-out's actually going to look like. Anyways, guys, that will do it for today's episode. Like I said, a little bit more exploratory and ponderous, but since it's the summer and since we've been having this conversation over and over about bubble or not, valuations too high or not, I think digging a little bit deeper, peeling back the surface, understanding what else is happening, what industry areas are coming to the fore to actually enable this transformation is a really interesting place to spend some time. For now, though, that is going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Until next time, peace.